4:32, we'll call the meeting of the Whitman Middle School Building Committee to order. If you could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd just like to remind everyone that this meeting is more than likely being recorded for use at a later date.
Hold on, Bob. I think it's on. Recording. Yeah. Oh, it's on.
First item on the agenda is the meeting minutes approval. I don't have the dates in front of me. They were in our packets. Whereas I don't have the dates in front of me.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of September 27th, 2022.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay. Unanimous? And wasn't there a second one, John?
Yep.
Yeah, there were two.
Do you have the date of the second one?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of October 11th, 2022.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's unanimous. Project manager's report. Mr. Bates?
You folks hear me okay if I talk
Yeah.
like this? Okay.
And we do not have anyone on phone, so.
Great. Okay, that makes it simple. So OPM report, you're in receipt of October's OPM report. I have no encumbrances to report. And I just want to remind the committee that we do have a total project budget for feasibility of $850,000. The MSBA is reimbursing the district at a rate of 57.74%. That equates to a max feasibility grant of $490,000 and $490,790. So to date, the MSBA has reimbursed the district in the amount of $82,409. So that's about just under 17% reimbursement to date. In your packet, you have what we call the budget revision request template. We've titled it Budget Revision Request Number 1. So as a background, when the MSBA established your feasibility budget back in, I believe it was July of 2021, they had provided estimates for the consultant fees with the understanding that the actual contracts will come in a bit differently. There's likely to be a need to shift some money between the line items as the things unfolded, as the contracts were signed, and the actual fees were established. The mechanism for doing such a budget revision is by using what the MSBA's budget revision template, which is what you see in your packet right now. In our case, we had a $34,200 line item for environmental and site testing, which is not going to be sufficient to cover the actual contract amount for that scope of services. And so we're at the point now where we need to shift some funds to cover incoming voices for those consultant fees. This revision requests proposing to move $48,000 from the contingency line item termed other and move it into environmental testing to cover some incoming invoices. And I have shared a draft copy of that budget revision request with our project manager at the MSBA. They find no objection, and we are free to approve. And I just want to note that we do continue to have an additional contingency in the amount of $46,000 in the OPM line item. Our actual OPM fee came in substantially under the MSBA's estimated fee amount. So we do have that to use going forward should the need arise. But at this time, we'd recommend approving to transfer $48,000 from the line item other into environmental site and testing to cover the overages. So again, I just want to reiterate iterate one thing. We are not talking about increasing the budget amount. The $850,000 does not change. We are merely shifting funds from the other category into the environmental site and testing category.
So this is the document in our budget that's called Whitman FSA Budget Revision Request.
Yes.
Whatever the number is. So do you need a vote for us to?
Yes, we would like a vote to submit that budget revision request to the MSBA.
Okay.
So I'd be seeking a motion and a second, and then we can have further discussion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Beth. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Unanimous? Okay. All right, thank you. One last item on the OPM report. I just wanted to note to the committee that the working group has been put on temporary hiatus. We had discussed with Mr. Farrow and Mr. Simonak that it would be best to not have conversations pertaining to the auditorium and to grade configuration without the presence of the committee as a whole. For that reason, as I stated, we are putting the working group on a temporary hold. They would absolutely need to resume once the decisions on those aforementioned topics were decided on. The working group is a very essential component to this process. But for now, as mentioned, we are on pause. Any questions, concerns regarding that? We'd be happy to discuss.
Seeing none?
Okay. And that concludes my OPM report. And I will turn it over to AI3.
Thank you, everyone. So we have essentially three topics tonight, all discussions and no formal votes or by the committee necessary tonight. So first, we're going to go through the schedule in just a second. We'll talk about the PSR activities and milestones. The second item is grade level configuration and open discussion related to that. Auditorium, cafetorium discussion, again, open discussion, and then our development of the PSR options as voted on by the committee at the last meeting to continue pursuing and developing as part of the PSR preferred schematic report discussion. Julie, go through the schedule?
Yeah, I'll just highlight this is, of course, nothing new, but we've since moved from our last meeting together into this second step. So now we're in that PSR phase, and that, of course, is about development of these preferred options, which we'll get into later. Still targeting that March 2nd date, and we have a few milestones and some upcoming slides that we can talk about to inform that March 2nd submission. And so that a few key components of the PSR will be a finalized educational program, and so that will require some approval by the school committee beginning of February. The bulk of the PSR will be that preferred schematic option that will then move into schematic design, and we are developing, as Troy mentioned, the 4 that were previously decided upon, so now we're getting into a little bit more detail on those. And then the grade level configuration decision will also be a major piece of that PSR submission. And then just looking at those in a little bit more detail, you can see that development of the preferred option is sort of that primary chunk of the report, and we've begun all of the activities related to that. There is some educational programming activities we'll have to get back into with the district, and then the completed option is just the determination that a 3-level scheme is really what we're targeting. And I just want to point out that because the submission will be March 2nd, backing up from that a little bit, we know there's the school February break. So we'll be looking for the building committee to approve the PSR in about mid-February, which means that Troy and I will be presenting options that need to be decided on right at the beginning of February for the most part. So it sort of expedites the report timeline a little bit.
So grade level configuration, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about that. This is similar to the presentation that we did collectively at the community forum a few weeks back. This first slide just gives you context as far as public schools in Massachusetts, a few different sources, including the Mass Department of Education and the configuration of middle schools throughout Massachusetts. As you can see, most are connected with either a upper grade level or a lower grade level, where you have 5-8 and 6-8 at about 15 to 21% approximately between the two. And then on the left-hand side is our participation with working with districts in designing middle schools specifically, 6-8 and 5-8, and it's pretty cut down the middle as far as the difference in the number of 5-8 and the number of 6-8 that we've been involved in, and it is really specific to the individual district as far as what direction is preferred. So with this, perhaps Superintendent Simonak, if you want to say a few words about this in the next slide, or maybe.
Sure. I spoke to this a little bit at the public forum. Basically, we brainstormed the pros and cons of 5 through 8 and went through when we were talking about the educational plan. And these are the benefits we see as an educational team to moving our 5th graders to the middle school. Different as far as intellectual, giving an opportunity for early childhood with the movement from our Duval and Conley School, more of a diversified curriculum, opportunities for extracurriculars that we don't see at the middle level, collaborative spaces outside of the elementary. We're looking at a maturity difference. 5th graders now, they partner better with 8th graders. Teachers are at one school instead of two. Duval and Conley sending 5th graders to one school. Next slide, if you could. We're looking at 2023, where 5th graders are now more adolescent than young children. Transition years, 4 years at our elementaries, 4 years at middle, 4 years at high. Counselors, social emotional benefits at a middle school versus an elementary. So there's the list, and I believe that you have them in your packet. We could add more, but this is the list that we went through.
Yeah, to that point, this is the conversation that we can add, remove, alter the slides and the points for and against 5-8, bringing 5-8 to the middle school, whichever you would prefer. And so that's the intent, is to identify, have the conversation, so as we move through the process, the most appropriate and most accurate information is provided. So, yep.
2 things. One, I would like to see us, perhaps at our next meeting, be able to have a solid list of pros and cons, so that everybody can share, and hey, these are the good points, these are the bad points, so that we can get to it making an educated decision. Number 2, the difference between, and we shouldn't be talking between Hanson and Whitman, but it's being spoken about, that Hanson children are receiving a lot more instructional time.
That tomorrow at our school committee meeting. It's on the agenda.
Okay,
There's a lot of discussion around the community that will be addressed at tomorrow's school committee meeting around instructional time and time in classroom and then time of day. Because right now our elementaries are running 6 hours and 5 minutes a day, and Hanson Middle School is running 6:30. I will have a breakdown for the school committee tomorrow.
Okay, and then can we have a further subsequent breakdown for this grouping at the following meeting? I can appreciate that you want to.
Yeah, I want to share with the school committee first.
I can appreciate that.
And the one piece, Fred, with I understand the pros and cons piece. I know there is some of that we brainstormed in the working group. So since we've abolished the working group, you're going to have George and I giving you those pros and cons. And I don't know if that's a representation of all the cons that might be in this room. So, you know, when you said I have that, we don't have a working group. If I sit down with George, we brainstorm the cons that we see already that could be pieces I would like to hear from some members potentially, because I don't know if that's a fair representation, because we are, and I will say, I'm in the affirmative of the 5 through 8. I don't think it's a fair representation for me to represent my I will give you the cons that I can see as barriers, but I think you're going to see more pro from me and George and my team than that.
And, you know, I believe it's evident here that would be expected. I mean, I'm talking to everybody I can, and I'm hopeful that everyone else on this committee, you know, would do any research.
So we can have an open discussion about that, share that.
Exactly, and everyone can, you know, plus what you're hearing from people. You know, what do people say? I mean, I've shared with you, you know, pretty much the phone calls that I got. You know, so that way there we can have an open dialogue and just be able to pick everything up. I think that would benefit the committee the best. Sorry to...
No worries. We will. There is a slide on the cons or the against 5-8, and so any specifics we can include them.
Okay. Have you had other districts that have either, you know, had looked at it and either went with 5 through 8 or went with 6 through 8, etc., in any of their research that you could share with us?
That's exactly what has gone into this. All of the information that we have collected over the years regarding different districts, 5-8, 6-8, and the pros and cons, as well as the research that that superintendent, assistant superintendent, and their group have done. That's all been included in here. So yeah, there isn't anything left that we know of that's not in this unless it's brought up in this forum.
Thank you.
Sure. So actually just before, so going through whatever grade level configuration as far as 5-8 is concerned here with organizations, as you guys voted on, we're looking at a 3-story scheme. Now that can take on different configuration, different organizations. This is it here to illustrate the fact that whether it's a horizontal connection, a vertical connection by floor, that there are different organizations and ways to connect 5 and 6, or 7 and 8, or separate 5 from 6, 7, and 8 in that organization. So you can see the diagrams here as far as vertical connections, vertical separation, or horizontal separation. So as we move through the design process, there are ways to respond and thoughtfully react to certain scenarios to provide solutions that, as an example, one of the cons is, or one of the against is that 5th grade is too close to 8th grade in proximity and maybe age as well. Is that in development? One of the thoughts, and one thing that we've done in the past, is segregate 5th grade from 6, 7, and 8 from a building organizational standpoint. 5 and 6 separated from 7 and 8. So there are different ways to organize a building that can be thoughtfully respond to any pros or any cons that we're talking about with the connection between grade levels. Some of the things that 5th grades would have access to: the maker, builder spaces, the innovation labs that you can see here. This is Beverly Middle School. Here's an academic neighborhood and things related to the new building that would be integrated as far as 21st century learning spaces and connectivity. Full-size gymnasiums with the most importantly, the athletic programs that come with it and the 6 through 8, the middle school environment. play fields, outdoor learning, the connection between indoor-outdoor learning spaces in the academic wing, as well as the surrounding area with the wetlands and outdoor classrooms. And then a broader social and emotional network within the middle school. And then here's the slide relative to against. And some of these include, just as I had mentioned, with physical size differences of the students across varying grade levels, the exposure of 5th grade to mature conversations, the close proximity at different ages on the bus simultaneously, and then teacher certifications for elementary versus middle schools are different, and then less total recess time, 35 minutes in elementary versus 24 minutes in middle school.
Right. I think y'all know what I'm going to say. You're missing the biggest con of all, and that's the price. Okay? And, you know, depending upon where we want to say we're coming from, you know, who knows what the bond rating is going to be when we're there. But, you know, let's say we get an auditorium, let's say we'll go with that. If we use the 4.5% interest rate, it's $500,000 a year to the town difference between the two. It's about 15.5% on your property tax. So whatever your property tax is, 6 to 8, it's going to increase about 15.5%. If it's 6 to 8 with an odd, it's 17.5%. That's what everybody's going to pay. So whatever you're paying, that's what it is. And, you know, anybody that was at the community forum knew that I brought this up. That's the biggest obstacle we're going to have in selling us 5 through 8, and that's getting the taxpayers to vote for it. So all of this other stuff is great, and there isn't much I'm against in the 5 through 8, other than I'm skeptical we can pass it. That's my biggest concern, that we put forth something that, you know, I'm concerned about passing the 6 to 8, honestly. It's a lot of money, you know, so again, that's not on here.
So John, I appreciate that, because that's not my con for my education piece, right?
I understand that.
So I understand that has to be out there, and I think that's the piece here, and I can almost look at it around the room. Is that I mean, the cost is the cost. We have to give the best presentation, what we think is best for our kids educationally, and this is what I think we believe. Now there's the cost hurdle, and that's the further conversation of where this group is. I can't put that, because that would have been a slide up there, John, to say the con is the cost factor. But as superintendent and for my education group, I have to put the best product that I think is sustainable over the next 50 years outside the cost, with the understanding that the cost is going to be a huge factor of ballot box, whether it's 5 through 8 with 3 floors and an auditorium or not. But as far as my task and my job is to put the best product forward for this group educationally and understand the cost but not prioritize the cost, if that makes sense. I just wanted to validate. I hear you with that and I understand that. But the charge of the ed plan is to make sure that we're putting something forward that's going to be sustainable for our children in Whitman for the next 50 years.
I'm going to piggyback off of that for 1 second.
You agree with me?
Not, well, yes and no.
I was going to say this in a shape of it.
I mean, I can appreciate that you want to put the best that you feel is possible for children. That's what you're here for. At the same time, are the children better off with a 6 through 8? That's what we're replacing, is a 6 through 8 school. Are we better off with a 6 through 8 and feeling that that's the project that we can get past? Because we don't have the crystal ball. Or do we take the risk of the 5 through 8? And do the benefits, if there are determined to be the benefits, do they outweigh that risk by spending exponentially more money? Knowing, you know, or at least, and I'm speaking for myself, feeling that we have a conservative base. I feel that we owe the children in our town a proper learning environment. You're going to get people that say this is the way we've always done it, this is the way Hingham does it, and there were a host of others. This is the way they do it 6 through 8. You'll get people that will say, and I was one of them that started saying it, if Hanson had built a school as they should have, they never would have had to have closed the school, they never would have put 5th grade into Hanson, and I don't know that we'd ever even be having this conversation. So there's a lot of balls in the air. At the same time, I think everyone in this table, we're giving up our time on a Tuesday afternoon and other evenings and other days, to try and do what we can that we think is the best for the children in our town. So we'll hear everything, and John, I think your point is a valid point that has to be a very large consideration, and we will come to an agreement. We will have a direction, and it sounds like it has to be by the beginning of February.
It's got to be right in the January school committee meeting is the vote to move forward in one direction or the other.
Yeah,
So the school committee is going to vote,
Correct.
regardless of what this committee says or does.
Grade configuration, typically, historically, in the projects we've been involved in, the school committee has been the deciding body committee for grade structure, grade configuration for the school system.
And how many of them are regional school committees? You can eliminate
I
all
can
the
go
school
back and take a
committees
look,
that aren't. Any school committee that's not a regional school committee doesn't count. Only the regional school committees, because you've got
Well,
Hanson members of that school committee that don't have any skin in this game. They're going to only vote for what they want. So.
George?
I can definitely see what you're saying, John, but I think when you say they have no skin in the game, that does sort of take away some respect for their position if they're talking about as a regional school member. I don't know if they have, don't get me wrong. I can empathize with everything you said because I'm paying taxes and I live in this town and I'm hired by this town to be in education. So I have feelings about this, but it is a difficult situation all around that we'll have to get over, because if we're charged with doing what's best for the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District as school district employees, and then we look at the cost factor, that is something that's going to be a catch-22 issue on either side at the end of this. So it is a difficult thing, and I think you brought up good points, and I think you bring up good points. And I will say that if you look traditionally in the history of what middle schools are, they have, if you just look from 1997 on, they have moved more towards greater levels of a larger number of grades at a middle school level, taking into account, since Turning Points happened by, I think, the Carnegie Foundation in 2000, and put it out, that age 10 to 14 are your most vital years of development. If you look at ages 10 to 14 as your vital years of development, that leads to the grades 5 to 8 school. When I was in New Bedford and I was doing my internship there, they moved from 7-8 to 6-8 because they just adopted it. And it was the same thing. They went from 7-8 to a 6-8. So when we talk about what are the needs and what are the situations, if we don't talk about money, I truthfully believe that 5 to 8 is the best way to service a student. When you put on, okay, now how do you pay for that and how does the town afford it, that is a difficult conversation that needs careful consideration, so I agree with you.
And to speak to Mr. Galvin's point, I think the cost, it's upsetting that it has to be such a relevant part of this, but it is. It's realistic. We have to worry about what a cost factor is, and it has to play into, all considerations. At the same time, and with all due respect to my fellow committee members from Hanson, they're not going to have the weight of the cost factor perhaps as much as a Whitman person that's actually going to be writing the check.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
And that's,
And whose constituents are voting for
And
it.
it must be difficult for yourself, Fred, because you're sitting here as a regional school district member thinking about what do we put out at the end of 12th grade with the vision of a graduate going from K to 12 in the same district, and then saying we might only have to go and not be the same as a regional school district. So I can empathize with where you sit also, because that's a difficult spot that you're in also.
and do I want to be associated with a product or a project that gets to a ballot box and fails? That to me would be the ultimate dagger.
Right, but I'm assuming you're balancing that with what
That's
you
what
feel
I'm
as
trying to
as
do.
the school committee person from a K to 12 regional school district.
Trying to do the whole balance with everything. So,
If there is, just to the John's original question, if there is a different arrangement that we're not aware of in the district relative to who votes on the grade structure of the district, whether it is Whitman or Hanson, then we would need to know, just because January is the dates or is the month that we need to have a decision both on 5A, 6A, or auditorium, no auditorium, to move forward and work through, as Julie was mentioning, backing out the date of March 2nd, delivering that single project to the MSBA and the backup documentation and the necessary information to develop from that point. So January is the month that we would need to have the votes.
I think perhaps, okay, do you want to speak?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, I don't think we can sit back here and say there's an educational product and there's a building product. It's all one. We're all here because there's a need to build a new middle school. Now, cost and educational plan are going to have to come together for that plan to be complete. And I'm sorry, but cost is just as, if you want the project to pass, like Mr. Galvin said, cost is a factor. That's great to say we're putting what we think is the best educational plan. What we should be doing is thinking about what's the best path to getting something we need. And that may not be getting everything educationally you want. But what we do know is we need a new school. And that from a town standpoint, I'm sitting back saying, what does the town of Whitman do if this should fail? Because is it $30 million we have to try to figure out to Band-Aid the school together to get something? I mean, ultimately, the goal should be a passing product. That may not be everything you want. It may not be the cost that the townspeople want, but there has to be a balance. And as I'm looking at this, it almost feels like I'm trying, I don't know if this is exactly what went out in the in the forum, but I looked at it and it feels like I'm being upsold. You have 8 pages of why we need 5 through 8, but yet in your own numbers to say to George, is this the way this is moving? It's 21 to 15%. 21% is staying 6 to 8. The other thing I have a major problem with is Hanson folks voting on how to spend Whitman money. They're not going to get that bill. I don't know at what point this, if you decided it, if Collier's decided it, but I think we're the building committee, and we joined this committee and were appointed to make this decision. And now I don't know if it's the buy-in isn't there for 5 through 8 or 6 through 8, but it seems like now this committee's getting circumvented to go to a committee that, yeah, we have a better chance of getting what we want there. I have a problem with that. I have a big problem. I don't think Whitman folks have ever voted on monetary issues, money that would cost Hanson folks to up their tax bill. It's wrong. It's flat out wrong, and it should only be people that pay taxes and live in this town that are actually voting on how those tax dollars get spent by anyone. So I'd like to know when that was decided. Did you decide that? Did the superintendent decide? Who
Decide
decided
what?
that?
I'm sorry.
That the school committee would now start voting on building committee? Because it's not just an educational plan. Their decision goes far beyond education. Their decision hits me in the wallet possibly. So you
Yeah.
can't say that's strictly educational. Grade configuration is strictly educational. It's a large part of the project, possibly 20% more.
Sure. What I was referring to is that historically, and I believe I said that historically in past districts, that the school committee has been the entity.
And the question was, is that a regional school?
There have been some regional
if
schools.
it-
However, that's the vast majority were not regional schools. So that's why I asked the question. If there is another arrangement, we just need a direction on which way to go.
I mean, a non-regional school, it's taxpayers voting how to spend taxpayer money. It's elected officials from that town voting how to spend that town's money. I have no problem with that. But to have another group of people that are not affected by this be able to vote is wrong, in my opinion, and shouldn't be done. And honestly, if I would have known prior to getting on this committee that, oh, by the way, we're going to go to another committee to actually make decisions, that we're all going to, so this committee that's put the time in now is bound by another committee that is only based, see, I look around this table and I would hope that we are all saying we're pulling from everything to put forward the best possible project. It's a lot easier to sit at a school committee and say, oh yeah, they made a great pitch educationally. But is that what gets the project passed? And that should be the goal of this committee, is to get a project passed. So yes, it's education, yes, it's cost, and it's one and the same, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Anybody else? No, I want to give everyone an opportunity to speak if they want to speak.
Well, I'll go. I just think, I'll piggyback off Randy. I think, when I joined this committee, I too thought that this committee was going to be making the decision, and that's why it was presented at day one, that these were our options and these are the things that we were going to be deciding on. So I think it should stay within this committee on the number of grades that go into a Whitman school, even though we're a district or a regional district. But I do believe that it should stay within Whitman, and most of the members here are Whitman residents. So, that would be my opinion. That's what I thought when we joined. That's what I thought was one of the deciding factors that we're going to decide.
I appreciate that too. So if I could, one, I don't disagree that we form this to make decisions. When we talked about the ed plan, historically, and again, my first building project, I'm going with the experts that was hired to guide us through this process. I can also consult with Mars to see how many schools have built within their district, and I know Dennis Yarmouth was one, and this was a bone of contention within their own. Who's going to vote on the new middle school in Yarmouth? I can get some more information from this committee back, and then move forward to who has that authority. Because I don't know if it's not bound through MSBA, correct?
Right. Correct. Yep.
This is, though, and I appreciate everybody on this is a subcommittee of the school committee, because we have to report back as a subcommittee with more authority, I think, because you're making decisions outside the scope of the school committee for the town. So I think there's gray, and I think we have to make that much more clear before we get into the voting aspect of who's going to make these decisions.
When you say that MSBA is non-decisive, have we spoken directly about that with them?
The MSBA in past projects has been non-decisive because it's up to the district to determine what the appropriate approach is for the district, whether that's 5-8 or 6-8, or whatever grade structure is being evaluated as part of the project.
Okay, because
I just would echo what Troy just said, that their position is that it's a local decision, and that the goal would be for there to be a consensus amongst the committees. on this topic, so just echoing that.
And when was that? Has anybody checked on that more recently, or is that from past practice?
That is on this project. That's an email discussion I had with our PM on this project, and that was probably within the last couple of months.
So we can find out some more information before we get that out. I'll get my side of the Mars piece, and then I think it's going to be some decisions to make and getting as much information that we can to move forward before any votes are taken. Because the vote from the school committee is in January, is that correct?
Correct.
So, John, you spoke with MSBA, just so I can get this straight, and they do not opine in this at all. So the governing body that we're all bound by doesn't get, so I really don't need to hear from other agencies like Mars. You know, it's this committee. I don't know how all of a sudden, an educational plan to me is what you're going to put into the school, what programs you're going to have. Not how much more square footage, because that's ultimately what it is. The school committee will determine the square footage of this building. And it's non-residents that are going to, build it bigger. What do I get? Right? Yeah, put it all in. They don't have to pay it. The people out there have to pay it. Or the people out in town get stuck because we didn't do due diligence and look at both aspects of the project. I think a few of us have, right from the beginning, have said, yes, there's an educational piece, and yes, there is a dollar amount. And though we have to meld those together to get something that's approved. This 5 through 8 with all the bells and whistles at $130-something million, I would give less than a 10% chance of passing. I mean, there's some people's taxes, like you're talking $1,500, $1,600. Never mind what you get hit with for a normal tax, increase in a normal year. But what are the projects or possible overrides that the town has to deal with? So when I look at this project, the town has some major challenges ahead, and it's one, being able to fund everything properly to level service, if not adding things. It's a DPW project, it's a school project. So not only am I talking size and grades, in my head and where I sit, I need to make sure every one of those is a necessity. One doesn't trump the other. How do we blend them all together? And I'm just taken back that we're even sitting here saying that Hanson folks are going to spend our money. It's wrong, and I don't know I'd like to know when that came up. Like, who said the school, if MSBA is not directing us to do that, who initiated now the school committee votes on the project? Anybody?
Excuse me, but he told you that he was going by the majority of what he worked with. That's what happened. And
But it's not the majority, but by their own
the majority
slide.
of how they chose is what he's saying.
The school
committee
districts
chose.
that we have worked with in the past,
have chosen.
the 16 to 20 middle schools that we have done, the majority of those schools, the school committee decided on the grade configuration.
Okay,
So,
so 16
what
to
I'm-
20 projects, how many, if they were your project, how many of those were regional schools?
I don't know off the top of my head. So, but my point overall, and what I have said is, as a regional school district, if there's a different arrangement, we need to know. We're not determining who votes. We take your direction as the designers of the project, and then give you the best project that we can, period. And you'll see as we move through the slides, we're looking at all of the options. 5-8, 6-8, no auditorium, with an auditorium. And then if you continue into the slides, we'll go through them. there's a matrix of consideration for the vote of the project that the committees, the committee and the school committee, well, actually not the school committee in that situation. It involves cost. In fact, if you don't mind, I'm just going to, because it's such a... We're just going to scoot right to the end. It's the last 2 pages of your slide deck.
Going back to what you said, Beth, about we took as, it's kind of a moot talking point if 90% of the schools that he's dealing with were not a regional school district.
No, but you were asking who made that decision, and I'm just saying that he didn't really make the decision. He was telling you how this decision, why they put it out that way was because the other ones had done it, so he didn't know any different unless we tell them different. And that's what he's saying. If we tell them different.
Mr. Essen?
Yeah, I think, it's obviously, it's something that needs to get ironed out. So I think we need to have clear direction who is making this call. I believe that what you stated was in your historical past, that's what's happened, but you weren't referring to this particular project. Yeah. But I do think it's a huge concern to us all now. Who is going to be making this call?
So, if this committee votes, reaches a decision, good, bad, whichever side of the fence people are on, gets reported to MSBA, that was the decision. Why would it go to school committee?
I'm not an expert. I don't think the guidance that they were giving, I don't see anything documented that this is the path we have to follow. I'm not, this is the guidance that, so we've broken down, the school committee votes on this. I don't think that's the guidance. The form that you're going to see later on in the packet about the replacing people on this committee is the document that I sent to MSBA. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where that came from. I understand historically, but I can't answer, is that a binding piece that the school committee has to do that if there's no guidance from MSBA? I don't think so.
I just think to muddy the water, sadly, some more, and maybe this was how it happened. If you look at what a subcommittee does, it usually makes a decision and then goes to the higher authority that they're not a subcommittee of, just hear me out, and usually goes before them. So if you have a policy subcommittee, and I'm only speaking for school committee, if you have a policy subcommittee and they want to have a new policy, they draft it, and then it goes to the school committee. If you have your capital, you come up with what the capital is, agree on it, and then it goes to the school committee. That's the path that it seems like we've had on the school committee side. So I guess, whatever happens, we can take the vote with this group, we can take the vote. I guess my question is this subcommittee different?
It's not a subcommittee.
I didn't think it was a subcommittee either.
It's not a subcommittee. This is the Whitman Middle School Building Committee that was formed under the guidance of MSBA. If you look at the sheet that Jeff was just referring to, the roster sheet.
Sure.
Okay. Now, there are people that it must contain.
Sure.
Okay. It must contain a member of the school
committee. I thought
committee.
we were at a school committee meeting where it was decided that that's a subcommittee because it was made as a result. It was brought about as a result of a school committee meeting.
It was brought about
we had a school committee meeting where the chair was talking about what that would look like. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't pay attention. I sit in the back. But I'm saying if it isn't, it's cleaner. If it isn't, it's cleaner. I'm not trying to argue with anybody.
It was formed under the guidance of MSBA in relation to a statement of interest that the district presented.
And that the voters in the town of Whitman approved funding to go forward.
Right.
So
we should look at the minutes.
So I guess my question is, let's say this committee votes and we go 6 through 8 with a cafeteria. And the school committee doesn't like that. they want 5 through 8 with the Performing Arts Center. Who makes that decision?
So my understanding from Troy and from John is the education component is the school committee, everything else is this committee. So the auditorium cafetorium, historically, that's not up for vote at the school committee, that was here at this level. Now again, that's the conversation we had, and I don't think it's necessarily set in stone, and I think we have to figure this out before our December meeting.
So I would go back to my original question. So you guys did decide this thing. If he just said,
Nothing let me just...
oh, I know nothing's decided.
Nothing has
but
been decided.
The way we're being led or steered. Now, and this has only been in the last couple of meetings that all of a sudden the school committee's voting on things.
No, it's been from day one. But I think
It hasn't been from day one.
No, absolutely not.
it was early meetings when I was sitting here.
It's been over the past few months.
I respectfully disagree. However, when we hire AI3, their job is to direct us in a way. If we don't like that way, like you don't like this way, then we can change that because it's not under MSBA rules. So we pay them to steer us in a certain direction. If you don't like that direction, then change it. So that's what he's saying, that if this group decides that they want to make that decision, then so be it. I mean, if it's not directed by, that it's going to ruin our chances of getting reimbursement, then why are we arguing about it? If the majority of people here want to make that decision, then do so.
Well, I think the majority of people here thought we were going to make that decision. And I still go back to the question I asked.
Okay, well then so do it.
Before we get further into this, and a lot of us, take time on Tuesdays, and we don't come up with exactly the educational plan, can we vote a project that then the school committee says, nope, we're voting this, and whose authority then? Who are we going off of?
We would need to know from you if there is a structure in the district that is one governs the other, then that would be the deciding factor. We don't know what the structure is. So this is a conversation that needs to happen in order to get to a position where January we get a decision and we move forward with a direction. So we can give you all of our past 20 plus years of experience and help you. And if something just exactly as being discussed, if this isn't the direction that is the structure of the committees or the district that's making the decisions, and we just need to know what that is, we'll proceed any way forward that makes sense.
Well, I think now we're in a super gray area that I could make a motion right now that the Whitman Middle School Building Committee makes all decisions regarding any new middle school project. I then could sit in a school committee meeting where they vote that they desist. When appointed to this committee, I was under the belief that this committee would be making the decisions, not the school committee does, because why do we have principals, teachers, superintendents? Because they were adding to that educational piece. That's what they were bringing. Why do we have construction-related or building-related members? Because they're adding to that piece. And the committees, why do we have somebody familiar with the financial matters of the town? It just seems very strange to me.
I think this is an administrative issue. This shouldn't be discussed with the architect. We're giving him direction. Based on what I see from this committee, it looks like everybody here, well, a lot of the people here want to go 5 through 8. I think we've seen the price of that, and I think that the town is not going to have an appetite for it. But this should be the administration that deals with these questions, not the designer. and the project manager should be handling it as well. I think this is out of order. I think we need to figure out what we need. Well, maybe let him sit down for a little while, but his job is to take our direction to design a building.
I would agree. However, over the past 30, 45 days, maybe 60, when we've seen some of these slides, and as Randy had pointed out a little earlier, you have 8 pages. Like you have one bullet point, and it's a whole slide. Okay? You have one bullet point, it's a slide. Okay? And then you have the against, and you have 5 bullet points, no slides. I know myself, I've racked myself crazy trying to talk to different people and get different perspectives. And I got hit with things that I wouldn't ever have thought of. Okay?
I'm confused.
So I want us all to discuss it and this committee to come to a conclusion. Right. Knowing that you feel in your heart of hearts that yes, you're going to take cost into a consideration. Because it has to be considered.
Absolutely, the cost is important. But now, we've got the designer up here answering administrative questions.
But you've got the designer preparing these slides. So that's where I think that they are 100% needing to be listening to what this committee's discussing.
So in other words, not push it to a certain...
Not push to a certain conclusion. And I think that the whole committee to be discussing these things. Okay, not, just, and I know Jeff had mentioned the educational workshop or that working group, but I really feel that the whole committee should be talking about all of this.
Here's my question then. If we come up with a $110 million project that we're going to vote on, and now that can go to the school committee and the school committee can up it and say we want 5 through 8?
That's what they're saying.
I don't think that that's how it works.
That's the way it should not work, but that's...
In January, we're going to know what we're going to be designing. We're going to know whether it's an auditorium or a cafetorium. I have a couple questions about the cafetorium part of this, is that we have a cafeteria which MSBA will help pay for. And the auditorium part of that, which is 1,600 square feet?
The stage part of that.
The stage part?
Yeah.
Now, the MSBA doesn't help us with that?
If it's attached to the auditorium, then they do not. If it's part of the cafetorium, then they do reimburse.
Right. So it sounds like this project's going to be expensive. When we started this committee, we were talking 80 million, 50 to 85 million. It's way above that. I think that we have to think about what we can sell to the town.
But do we want to put in all the work to come to a reasonable decision?
I don't think that happened with the high school, that the school committee said, okay, we don't like what you decided, we're going to change it.
No, it never happened.
No, and that's not going to happen.
Okay. But no, what they're saying is that once we vote on it, then it's going to go to the school committee.
Hopefully the school committee will have confidence.
And then the difference between this project at the high school, everybody was involved. Everyone had skin in the game, so to speak.
Right, the school committee attended all those meetings?
Some school committee members were on the building committee. Okay, but you had Whitman and Hanson because it was a project that was born, comparatively.
I think we have to put that aside and what's best for the town.
Right,
then we go to the school committee and we have to sell it to them.
Now, I know you work for Hanson, but would you feel... You did?
Well, I did,
okay.
Yeah,
would you feel that it would be fair for Whitman people to vote on Hanson tax matters?
I'm not sure about the precedence of that, but that's something that we don't need to decide with the designer asking these questions. Project manager probably can find all this out for us. And we've got the superintendent of schools.
Well, project manager said that MSBA is fine with our vote.
I'm concerned about this project going way too expensive. My feeling is that the designer thinks that we're going to go for 5 through 8. I don't know if that's how you really believe it, but my feeling is that this committee looks like it's going that way, and I would like to give the best possible school to the town, but I also have to be reasonable and expect and hope that we can sell it, because I've seen projects fail. And we need to come to the town with something that's going to be that we can.
Mr. Lamantino.
Well, I do kind of get your point, Bob, that we're up here with the designer, but 14 pages of their presentation are based on bullet points.
5, yeah.
Yeah, mostly 5 through 8.
we're happy to put in the against for 5 through 8 and bolster that as well. This is your project. I can't emphasize that enough.
Well, I know you're saying that, but I think, maybe you're right, maybe they do need to sit down, this committee needs to come up with a direction of, this is what we're...
Why wouldn't we set a budget? Why can't we say, this is what we're willing to spend?
We did set a budget in the RFP, 85 to, a ceiling that doesn't even remotely seem what...
Right, so now we have to say, we're going a little bit above what we, as a committee, want to spend. So we can give him direction accordingly. If we tell him we want to spend $110 million, he's not going to put in a 5th grade. That's the issue. And there certainly isn't going to be an auditorium.
Bob, I think that when we start getting up here and talking about cost, it's like it gets shoved back in your face, like, oh, don't talk about that, doesn't matter.
No, I know, but it's...
We need to do educational. Well, what happens, education's really going to suffer if we're stuck in that building another 5 years.
Yeah, I know everybody's talking about what's in here. I think what everybody's forgetting is a lot of this presentation was because of the education part, and not because of the cost, which I understand, that's very important, but some of the presentation was educationally what is best. Now, that doesn't mean it's best for the cost or best for the town, but I think that's why this is like that, is because your education people said 5 to 8 is best, so that's what they went on. They're not going to make things up. They're going by what would, but no, Randy, listen, okay? I know you have your opinion, and I know, but I'm just saying.
You don't know my opinion, Beth, but...
Well, I've been hearing it, so yeah. But I'm just saying, why can't we just make the decision here if we want to do that? I don't think, like Bob said, if we go before, if this is our recommendation and you present it to the school committee as this is what was decided, I don't think they're going to say no. I really don't. Come on. There's 2 of us here, and if the recommendation goes forward of whatever it is, and you and I are talking, and the superintendent, everybody here is talking, that could be at the school committee meeting, I really find it hard to believe that the school committee would turn it down.
And once again, no offense to the school committee. Why?
I think we just have to make a presentation. I'm not saying they have to vote on it. I'm not saying they have to vote on it.
It shouldn't be.
But I would
to
think
give them a presentation and
right.
to keep them in a loop, yeah, we report out.
Because we have to do that, because it's on our thing.
One of the things too, and I think that's comfortable, but one of the things that I had asked Troy about too is there's a piece in here about getting the selectmen's endorsement. And I asked about a presentation to the selectmen as we move forward, because I think it's important. But that doesn't mean approve it. It's an endorsement. So if the Board of Selectmen, if this committee comes up with 6 through 8 auditorium as a move through, school committee endorses it, and the selectmen say no, that doesn't mean the building project doesn't go forward. Am I wrong, or you know what I mean? Because we're looking for that endorsement. So in that light, is that looking at a school committee endorsement as well? Because this building committee will make that decision.
Do
you know what I'm saying?
And I think that's quote unquote palatable. What they're saying is a school committee vote. That was the exact verbiage that's been used.
January.
Yeah. No, I did, based on historic votes. Correct, 100%.
But if we say that we want it to be our vote, he'll go by that.
So I don't know if someone wants to make a motion or if we just want a consensus of this committee that...
I think it should be a motion, to be honest.
I think it should be a motion.
A motion with endorsements, I think.
But is it on our agenda to we be able to vote that tonight?
So probably not, but I would also say you should solidify your committee first, because that's on the agenda.
Oh, yeah, we don't
To
have
solidify the committee,
We have voted those committee positions.
but they're different now.
What do you mean?
on the back page.
But we're out of order right now, so. it's not that. But I know we have to, I have to submit something back to MSBA, and it's potentially moving Mr. Galvin out of the finance area to the other piece, you know, because he was under the guise of finance.
He never was. Neither was Mr. Cordero. We need a budget official, okay, an official related to the budget.
Correct.
Okay, which is Mr. Lamattina.
Correct.
Okay, so we don't need a finance committee member.
I understand. But I think he was under that as a finance committee.
I don't think it was ever stated that.
But I'm putting him in a different spot. I just wanted to be
Yeah,
correct.
and we had voted that. Not mistaken, we voted that way back when. We also voted Tim and Brandon.
All right. We just want to make sure this is correct. Because Lincoln's not on this, we never officially removed Lincoln. And I was asking for Frank to be a replacement of Lincoln. And he's not here for that. So before making any votes, I'd like to make sure we have the official voting members.
Well, that's up later in the agenda, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Can we allow them to continue their presentation?
Yeah, go ahead, let's get that finished and...
Okay. So just because we're on the last two slides, I'm going to go through these first. And then we'll go back to the four new construction options and the one ad reno options that the committee voted us to continue to take a look at. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the slide presentation, this is in here to get your feedback. This is based on historical information, decisions other committees have determined is the evaluation criteria on what is considered as far as voting on a single option. Educational program, community and access, construction phasing, second page sustainability, and the last one cost. Obviously in no particular order. We sent this afternoon. If you guys could take a look at this, provide us with feedback at the month of January, these and items you guys as a committee determine to add, delete, modify will be considered. And then each one of those options, excluding option 1 right there because that's the base repair, that those will get valued, typically not in a numeral fashion, but in just a fashion of green, yellow, red, depending on its importance. It can be numeral if that's what the committee desires, but it gives a framework for making a single decision or making a decision for a single option. I think it hits on all the comments that were being made tonight relative to cost, educational program, and many others. Yes.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Option 1, which is a base repair only, that is code upgrades of what's needed, and it's not code by MSBA, it's code by Massachusetts Building Code.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Yep. I just want to make sure that was clarified.
And that will be removed at the next, that was inadvertently placed on this list because it was voted at the last meeting not to continue with option 1. The others, 7A, 4B, or 7A, 4B, 5B, 8B, and 9B, those are the ones that the committee, as 3-story structure for new construction, 2-story for ad reno, those we're continuing, and Julie's going to go through those in just a few minutes.
The base repair option, and I know we weren't going to be continuing, but there is at least a outline of what that option entails.
Correct. It was submitted as part of the PDP submission to the MSBA.
Okay.
As a matrix of delineation of improvements and cost associated with that. If I remember correctly, it's about $57 million overall as an option.
And because doing nothing really isn't an option.
Right.
That's, so we have an accurate cost of, if we do nothing, it doesn't address class the physical size of any classroom, hallways, stairwells.
Bathrooms.
Okay, bathrooms. All it does is it allows us to repair the building to stop water from coming in, hopefully remediate mold, and to bring it up to code for 2023, I would guess. And that's triggered by what you're spending on other parts. There's that trigger. You gotta go to...
And to meet accessibility requirements.
I'm sorry?
Right.
And to meet accessibility requirements as well.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
So if anybody has any thoughts now, great. If not, please forward them to John Bates, and he'll get them to us that we can include for the next meeting.
Fred.
Yep.
So I even voted for the higher tier remodel. But in hindsight, I actually probably would have voted for the lowest tier from a town standpoint, that if the project ultimately failed, at least we would have something for our money to go off of. Because at that point, you know, the project, we know the school cannot continue because of mold and water issues, and we know we need to do something. Will this committee be able to have anything to take away if at the ballot box this fails? Will we have some type of direction of, okay, at least we need to, there's a cost and we need to know we need to do these certain things?
If it's related to things like system upgrades or code required, like seismic upgrades, or anything related to ADA requirements, then there's the spreadsheet that identifies potential costs. There isn't, like, if you're asking, is there like a construction document that you can bid out for HVAC system upgrades? There wouldn't be anything like that. It would just be a big picture concept of what needs to occur for code repair, code upgrades or code compliance, and what the potential cost is at the time that we submitted the documentation.
So then, okay, I've got a question. So if I can. So then going off that, so then if something fails at the ballot box, then basically we have the plans that we've had, the work we've provided, but the MSBA is over, and then if there's got to be something done to maintain working in the school, it's just we start over with something else.
Correct. There would be no bidding documents. There would be no nothing related to, nothing in detail related to necessary upgrades. Yeah.
And just those documents wouldn't be produced until after, hopefully there's a successful vote. Is that correct?
So this phase, you will identify one single project moving forward that will move through schematic design from March 2nd through next November, October, November, where the ballot vote, that single project. When the project passes, then we'll go through detailed documentation, so design development, construction documents, and bidding through construction. Okay. So bear with me just 1 second here as I move back. Okay, so the auditorium, cafetorium. Oh, it's catching up to me. My apologies.
A lot of slides, huh?
56. A lot of slides. So a lot of work going on. So cafetorium, auditorium, Some of you may have seen this breakdown between the two cafetorium grade level configuration 6858 and the associated square footage based on MSBA guidelines. This stage, you can see through the auditorium and cafetorium, is the same 1,600 square feet. Number of seats and capacity with the approximate capacity of the cafetorium, 257, 337 with 6858 respectively. And then auditorium, similar breakdown you can see as the auditorium area square footage based on the grade structure, same stage area, number of seats, 343 related to 68, and then 450 related to 58. That's prescribed, meaning that that's associated with the MSBA guidelines for an auditorium based on a square footage per pupil and the number of seats. And so that calculation is in the space summary as part of each of the options that's been submitted to the MSBA as part of their standard space summary. As you all well know, the MSBA will not participate in the auditorium scenario. It's about $3 to $4 million that the estimators have identified. The cafetorium, the capacity above, based on that calculation, and the capacity also is prescribed, meaning it's 15 square feet per pupil relative to the square footage of each of those scenarios. So this is the middle school, as you guys are very much aware, the cafetorium. This is a cafetorium example from Blackstone Valley Prep that we did in Cumberland, Rhode Island. This is Hingham Elementary School, East Elementary School we did in Hingham, which was also a cafetorium. An auditorium in Quincy, Southwest Middle School. Some of you saw this and toured the school. You see the auditorium in Natick as well. And then this is a gymatorium that we designed in Newton for Jackson Walnut Park School. And then as far as the question related to technology and the systems, it's important to point out that both of them, as I mentioned during the community forum, both of them are going to be state-of-the-art facilities. Now, state-of-the-art facility for middle school is slightly less than the state-of-the-art facility for the high school, naturally because of the number of pipe battens, the LED lights, the sound system, and the audio connections, and the number of microphones, et cetera, et cetera. So it will be appropriately sized, if approved, appropriately sized, similar to middle schools in the Commonwealth relative to the amenities. Here's a matrix just going through comparison between the three, auditorium, cafetorium, gymatorium, relative to the size that we just went through, the stage, whether it does or did not include a stage, they all do, the enrollment, and I can't say that, that the auditorium and gymnasium or cafetorium scenarios typically don't house the entire population, no matter what size school is constructed. There are some outliers, but they typically do not. It's about 3/4 of the, or 2/3, sorry, 2/3 of the population. Availability, you can see the auditorium versus the cafetorium, gymatorium, fixed seating, allows for flexibility, the lighting for performances as well as acoustics, and the relationship of community resources with MSBA funding and also income opportunities for the town.
I have a question. So
You bet.
It's. I mean, as I look at this and I've seen other schools, it's like, why would a gymatorium doesn't seem like it's conducive? Only because it's so high, the ceiling's so high, and you have more phys ed classes than you do lunch blocks. That, I guess in your experience, if you choose between auditorium side, if you choose between a cafetorium and a gymatorium, from a from an acoustic, a school-based, a functionalities? Do you have an option?
I would say based on our experience, if an auditorium is not provided, then a cafetorium typically is the direction. However, I would say designing both, that from an acoustic standpoint, a lighting standpoint, they're very similar. Their volume. A gymatorium has a very strict, because of the activities in the gym, has a very strict box-like form, whereas in a cafetorium, there's a little bit more leeway as far as being able to mold the space so that it can be more performance and cafetorium, and also function as a cafeteria as well. And it doesn't have to have the clearances and the volume that a gymnasium would.
Okay, so can I ask one more question? So if you're looking at the placement of, so it's hard to think of something new. So if you're looking at the placement of the cafetorium at the Whitman Middle School, right?
The existing.
The existing. To the right is the kitchen as you walk in the door. Then in the corner is the compressor and everything else. There are different, I'm assuming there are different pieces that could be considered that might not always play such a loud role in not hearing anything in a cafetorium.
So with a new organization and the ability to place mechanics separate from a cafeteria in that volume, then yes, there's your scenario, your existing scenario is challenging for a number of reasons. Related to proximity, age of equipment, the acoustic separation, like there are a lot of things related to that. But in a new build scenario, we have the ability, whether it's a relationship of the cafetorium or the cafeteria, its relationship to the mechanical room or any other space that may have a sort of louder background noise. We have the ability to separate, right, both physically and as far as acoustic separations. Yeah. Any other questions? We'll keep moving. Okay. So we're going to go through some of the development of the new construction schemes and also the addition renovation scheme.
So I'll just remind the committee that in October, AI3 left with the charge of investigating all 4 of these options for new construction. So tonight we do have options and floor plans for 9B, which would be a 5 through 8 option with auditorium, 3 stories, and that would be estimated at $109.25 million. Working down, and 8B would be 5-8 option, no auditorium, 3 stories at $105.25 million. 5B, 6-8 option with auditorium at 3 stories for $96.875 million, and then the smallest footprint option 4B, 6 through 8, no auditorium, also 3 stories at $92.875 million. And we'll go through those from sort of biggest building to smallest building, just so you can sort of get a sense of what's changing easier. And then we'll finish with the ad reno option that the committee had voted for us to investigate, 7A, which was 5-8 with an auditorium, and that would remain at 2 stories for $129.25 million. So.
It's going to probably, because of the graphic, it'll take a little bit, yeah.
Apologize. So we just wanted to emphasize that what we're presenting here tonight, it came from feedback from this committee and from the working group, and so a lot of iterations of each option were investigated. Not to say that the ones that we have moved forward with can't be revised or came from nothing. They came from a lot of input and feedback, and so this is just a menu option of some of the footprints and organizations that we did investigate, and ultimately aspects from a couple of these were sort of seen as fitting the educational program and the responses from the visioning sessions the most. And as a reminder, some of those aspects of the visioning and the ed program were that we need to develop a new building that can fit in the rear field without any disruption to the existing. We don't want any phased occupied construction. We want it to serve both academics and community, and so we've established this organization where a lot of those shared community spaces are at the front of the building, and then the academic wings maintain this relationship to the wetlands, but are also oriented most ideal to solar for energy efficiency. And so then we looked at, well, if we rotate the academic wings a little bit, now we're gaining some of that distance between the wetlands to abide by the buffers that are required. And we're opening up that space in between the academic wings for outdoor opportunities instead of this narrow alleyway. And as the academic wings sort of meet that shared spaces wing, if we sort of curve that a little bit too, we can increase visibility across the site for improved security. And then we also was important to locate some of those community resource spaces like student dining, performance, gym at the front of the building and bookending them enough where there won't be any site congestion. So we looked at sort of featuring student dining on the corner, maybe featuring a performance area. And then we were also directed by the committee to really focus on a compact building footprint solution. And so the gym sort of breaks away from that delineation of the shared spaces just to maintain a really reduced compact footprint. And you'll see in some of the floor plans, we've also looked at different configurations of the academic wing and ultimately landed on something that, again, sort of opens up from the inside into creating these connections to the wetlands. So looking at that in a building form, and again, working backwards, so this would be 9B, the 5 through 8 with an auditorium. You can see that the red program spaces would be classrooms. So we're looking at this individual academic neighborhood. In this case, it would be entirely 5th grade that has its own wing, and it's sort of opening up into the wetlands as you get closer to that area. Where it meets the shared spaces, we now have this overseeing of the entire campus by having administration and guidance and a lot of the administrative personnel at the front of the building. Student dining at the corner for ease of access in both service and community. And then you can see the gymnasium and the multi-purpose space are grouped sort of over in the alternate academic wing, and you'll see that those play a part in sort of supporting the academic wing on the 3rd story. On the 2nd floor, that shared spine includes a lot of the arts and technology spaces that would be shared by the across all grade levels. So that also reduces any sort of unwanted interaction between different academic neighborhoods because they could easily just sort of move to the end of their wing and traverse that shared spaces axis without going into any other academic wing. The media center would be sort of at the center of the school, just creating that ed hub that was really popular thought in a lot of the visioning sessions. And then having, in this case, the performance space at the corner on the 2nd floor sort of gives it more of that concert hall feel where anyone visiting would need to sort of move up into the building, and it has kind of a quiet corner to itself. And then on the 3rd floor, we're grouping 7th grade in one wing and then 8th grade in another, which would be built on top of the gymnasium form, and that contributes to having a lot of that compact footprint. In this case, we have a student collaboration space at either end of the academic wings, and in the future, we hope to get sort of more information in either working group form on what adjacencies work best for a lot of these programs. So we're just sort of going off of our prior experience and moving some of these pieces around. But you'll see ultimately that this plan is derivative in all of the options. And so this is an example of what the building could look like from the front as you approach. We know the forms and the geometries can be a little intimidating in plan, just looking at the plan, but in massing form, it can sort of have this nice balance and fluidity, and we're trying to use as much of a compact footprint as possible. And then I can move pretty quickly through the others. The 8B, which would be 5 through 8, without an auditorium, a very similar organization on the first floor. The second floor, the difference would be that, or actually I'll go back for a second. We would point out that the difference here is the student dining would have to sort of get elongated to include the stage, which would not be in an auditorium in this case. And so then we've included the other related music and band spaces as close to the cafeteria as possible to make any use of that stage. And we're replacing the auditorium mass and volume with this combined performance tech space and innovation lab, which maybe could have the opportunity to open up into one larger space.
One question, with the gym in this configuration on the first floor, there be access to the public separate from the school? In other words, they wouldn't have to go through the school to get to that gym, would they?
Yeah, we would assume that there would be access on that long face of the gym, or we could integrate a sort of separate hallway or vestibule as the schematic moved forward, but certainly. And I'll note too that, of course, the shape that the multi-purpose room is sort of taking in relation to the gym there is really just a response to knowing we want to build on that roof with the academic wing and having these mirrored academic wings, and so it sort of takes on that curve as well.
The efficiency of structure when we get to that point will be important.
That's right. And so then just to point out, Kristen.
I am not even going to pretend to know design. But if we were to do no auditorium, is it possible, because one of the huge negative parts from my perspective in the Whitman Middle School building currently, from the cafetorium's perspective, we cannot use that during any lunches, but we can also not use that in the morning hours prior to lunch or right after, because the lunch crew is cooking, cleaning, whatever. Is it design possible to open the stage on the other end for use, like on the back end of it? I realize in this picture, I think it's like a hallway behind it currently. Mm-hmm. Is it possible to put something else behind it? A classroom, the music room, the band room, something like that. Allow it to open and maybe have a soundproof barrier between the cafeteria and that stage so that it could at least be used during the day without an audience from the lunchroom. And then still open to the cafeteria for a larger space like that.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely do that and look into it. I think an example might be one of those innovation lab or performance spaces could be kind of coupled in with that. That'd be great. Something for us to investigate as well. And yeah, definitely getting more feedback like that in all of these plans would be really helpful. So.
Even if there's a lot,
And then in this 8B, just one difference here is that we've sort of provided a destination at the third level for the academic wings where they can meet at this student collaborative space right in that center court. And then the importance with these massing studies is really just, we're looking at the volumes, we're not looking at materials or where the windows are or anything. And I just want to point out with these, you'll see an increase in roof area as the building moves from bigger to smaller given the grade configuration change. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. As we move into the 6 through 8 option, this would be with an auditorium, and now you'll see that instead of the gym and multi-purpose space taking on a mirrored form as the academic wings, we just have a very rectangular shape and form for those spaces because we would not be on the 3rd floor. We are not proposing building an academic wing. Instead, it would be each floor level has a grade level, so 6 on the 1st, 7 on the 2nd, and 8th grade on the 3rd floor. So that would be a change in that option, with the performance spaces still remaining where they were proposed in the 9B option. And then this is what that looks like in massing form. So you can see we're not building a 3rd story on the gym area, but ultimately the footprint for all 4 of these remains much the same. So the size of the building isn't playing too much of a role in the overall how much space it's taking up on the site. And then lastly, for the 4B, no auditorium, same configuration with student dining. It now has a stage in it. So we've removed the auditorium. On the 2nd floor, again, we're proposing the performance space or performance tech lab and the project innovation lab as a sort of combined space in place of the auditorium as an option, with a lot of the related arts in the corner surrounding student dining, 1 grade level per floor, and then the 8th grade on the 3rd level. You can see there's a lot more roof area in this option, just given that it's the 3 grade levels. You can see that more evident in the massing. And then just a quick look at the ad reno. Much like what we were showing in sort of bubble form, we're proposing this additional 2-story academic wing along the residential side of the building. And then the difference in the building up to the massing. Everything in yellow in that massing would be what we would propose as an addition. And so remodifying that corner to include an auditorium, new arts and music spaces, and ultimately tearing off the inaccessible art or music and band spaces behind the cafeteria just to create a connection to the outdoors. So I'll stop there. That's all of our options in a nutshell.
I got one question.
Sure.
Is there a vast difference in construction timelines for these?
Yeah, there.
Yeah.
Go ahead if you want to.
There is. It's small. It's minimal. We estimated that for the 5 through 8, it would be about a 4-month difference between 6 through 8 because of just having more steel to erect.
And what would the 6 to 8 be for the duration?
28 months, we estimate.
28 compared to 32?
32, that's right.
Could you just go to the slide?
I don't know if we have.
Wasn't one of them a lot longer, the renovation?
The renovation is a lot longer.
That's right. That was
Right.
for new construction. And then the renovation, we were estimating to take as long as 48 months.
Yeah.
One of the big benefits of new construction is we don't have to worry about playing a chess game and moving people.
With the kids, right.
They can stay in place while the construction is occurring. Heck, maybe you can develop a curriculum of construction.
And we've done
Engineering.
that with others.
Yes, one of the schools that we visited did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the schools that we visited.
Jump off the beams, kids.
This is how you build the house. Well, or a building.
Any other thoughts, comments, feedback? Anything? Tear it up. This is a process.
So my question, so once the internal wrangling of the committee is done and we come up with something, then we talk, then there's the possibility to talk, like, for example, what Krista brought up, like, okay, that might be great, but could that be that, to look at that, and here's the reason
And we
why,
are
and all that stuff.
dying to get into those conversations. So even just things like where are we placing the teacher planning in relation to everything else?
It's really important, like we can't emphasize enough, as soon as we can re-engage and start the working group discussions that includes building committee members and the administration and educators, like it will continue to morph through the process, but as soon as we can re-engage, we need to, frankly, because we won't get to the end game unless we can get feedback on a regular basis. And the feedback will include, as it did before, the educational program, the educational space summary. As we refine, if you recall, there's a second step to the submission of the PSR that has the final design program attached to it, the final space summary. And then these options, just as Julie mentioned, with the adjacencies of teacher planning to whatever program or art or the stage in different locations, like that's going to influence each of the options as we move to the end of PSR when you all decide which option moves forward. So.
Well, yeah, but you still need to know what you're going to be speaking about, what building. In other words, you can't do it without basically two votes from this committee.
Well, no.
I mean, to an extent.
No, right now we need to know about all of them. So we're not just selecting one and moving forward and designing that project. We're moving forward with designing 6 through 8, no auditorium, all the way up to 5 through 8 with an auditorium. Each of those options have different aspects of the design, the programming, the adjacencies, the building footprint. And so even at this point, we'd be talking about all of the options, including the ad reno option. And that's where the development of the options and the feedback is important. Whatever option is selected moving forward, then the discussions get even more granular when you're talking about the individual spaces, and we'll be meeting with the faculty and staff related to each department developing through schematic design.
But it would be important where we don't need to have one of those decisions before we make some of those plan details. Like, for example, in all 4 of these, you'll notice that the academic wings are identical. Now, if we had feedback that said, we don't want teams, we want a different configuration, then all 4 of those would reflect that instead.
So the question that I'm curious about is, we don't want to, if you need the working groups to, get into those types of areas, then I would think you'd want to continue the working groups. But if the working groups are going to be focused upon 5 through 8, 6 through 8, auditorium, no auditorium, then I feel that's something that needs to come before this entire committee for discussion.
Completely agreed. 100%.
Yeah. And I think that's where the big disconnect, is. Now, to me, and this is me, and you're the experts, I would think that you would want to know what direction we were heading in, by vote of this committee before you came up with a plan. Like, I can understand, okay, teams. Yeah, that's something that the administrative team, the educational team, would be able to, say. It's also something to take a peek at what they're doing at the other middle school. What are they doing at the current middle school? That type of, quote-unquote insight.
It would certainly help if we did have the directive for one specific option to pursue, but knowing that we were charged with investigating all 4 of them.
And we're not at the phase yet for a single option. We completely understand that, and this is natural. We're typically at PSR developing 2, 3, 4 options, and so that's why. And they're going to be different based on those discussions, and they will be discussed in a different manner, as well as like with each option. If you don't have an auditorium, then it's a little bit different of a discussion relative to what the cafetorium looks like and how that's configured. And so it doesn't, for us, we need it for development of the process to get to the point where the committees will vote. Committees, however that plays out.
So, I mean, I would think you'd want to schedule a working group, for, that scope. I mean, I don't think, if you need that information, and it's not to make decisions, it's not to go, back and forth for information that realistically needs to come before the whole committee, but it's for you to be able to, do your job,
right,
so to speak. I mean, that makes total sense.
right.
I don't know if anyone else has any other viewpoints on that?
Thank you.
And you meet on Zoom, correct?
Yeah, it depends on mostly on Zoom, but at times it's good to just throw out the plans, sketch paper, everybody in the same room, and start to sketch, draw, and brainstorm.
As I know Mr. Galvin and Ms. Baffert have making the commitment to attend those meetings. Blast the invite to everyone on the committee. If they have time to sit and watch the Zoom or whatever, or if they want to take the ride up here, why not?
Great, thank you. So just a note, I think everybody's aware, the next community forum, December 5th, at the middle school, 6:30, and then March 2nd is the submission of PSR to the MSBA.
I just recommend that people go to the community forum. It's really good to see this. The second one there were more people than the first one. So hopefully we'll get more, but it's nice for members of the committee to be there too, because people are giving their opinions, so everybody needs to hear opinions of the community too, not just us. So.
If I could piggyback on that, invite anybody that is a resident of town to please come and hear what's being discussed.
We actually had somebody older than me there.
Yeah. And I talked to her last night, and she's going to try and help us with perhaps the library and being able to put something out, through the library. I was able to take the posters that Julie had done for our school or our parent-teacher conferences. I was able to take those 2 posters, put them up on Facebook along with a link to the last community forum and the last building committee meeting that I could find. So those are up on 4 different Whitman Facebook sites right now, asking people to go take the poll, etc. The more community involvement that we can get.
They're also laminated at the schools now in the main office. So if you're picking up your child or you have to dismiss your child, you can do it right there, and they have a sign-out book, so you can get that done also.
Oh, cool.
They'll
Great.
also go home in the newsletters of the women's schools. Not the high school, they really don't do that format, but the middle and the elementaries this week as attachments to the principal's newsletters.
Awesome. Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Lease update. Mr. Bates, did you want to give that, or would you like me to?
Well, I can kick it off. It's going to sound a little bit familiar to the grade configuration discussion, where we did reach out to the MSBA. We did share with them the parcel plan. We did show them a footprint of, a rough footprint of a proposed building on that parcel number 2. I'm guessing that's what it was, in that northeast corner of the site. The issue is, and I got a very, very limited response from our project manager, but the issue is access and control as it relates to the entirety of the site. That means access to and from the building. That means the parking on the site, and particularly during the construction process, but then afterwards, once the building is occupied. So the MSBA would want to see the district to have full access and control of the site through the duration. So again, it was a limited response. The encouragement from them was to have this worked out locally. That's probably a familiar thought this evening, but it was something that should be continued to be discussed locally, is the message that I got. That's what I can report to the committee.
Okay. I mean, we have a current lease, and the wording is very simple, that the school is in control of the property during school hours. After school hours, it reverts back to the town. We're sort of in a rock and a hard place on this committee because this is the MSBA that provides funding that is saying, well, just because the town and this regional school district both agree that this is okay and you're happy with the way things are working, because the region doesn't have an issue. Jeff has no issue with the way the current lease is structured. And the town is just saying, we just want to continue what we've had structured. MSBA is saying, no, you can't do that. I know that the town's legal counsel has been back and forth with MSBA. We will hopefully have an update very shortly. I was hoping to be able to have something tonight for us, but unfortunately did not.
Do you want me to speak on the
Sure.
town standpoint? So going back to the original lease discussion, Jeff and I were in the meeting, and we both agreed we wanted what we have now. Nothing different. It's worked for 30 plus years. That's what we want. We got a no from MSBA. That's not going to work. The town then goes back and figure out another way where we can give a parcel that the school sits on full access, and apparently that's again another no. What I will tell you is that, although not a vote, but I feel I'm probably going to have to put it on the agenda for a vote, is you're going to be told we are not going to give up full access of our fields. It's just not going to happen. We've presented numerous options now that keep exactly what we have, something that has worked for a very long time, that has not only worked for the town of Whitman, but it's worked for the school district. It's been a symbiotic relationship. We have not had issues. We're not giving up our fields. So other than a vote saying that and a formal vote goes back to MSBA, you know, we're kind of like left out in the dark here. We get third-party emails that I'm glad you're talking to MSBA and the superintendent's talking to MSBA, but we get, oh, you should have your lawyer now contact us because this isn't work. Well, we've done that. You know, we had a meeting, we waited 6 to 8 weeks only to hear exactly what we heard 6 to 8 weeks prior. We were told this is going to go to the head of MSBA and that there were special circumstances surrounding this and that he would rule. Well, all we keep getting is the same printout and the same jargon of, oh, this is the way MSBA does it. It doesn't work for the town of Whitman. Now, we need a project, but even the superintendent in that meeting, and one of my concerns is, we're not just giving up the fields just for a construction phase. It's for 50 years. And what I brought up was, we don't know, I don't think this administration would do it, but the next administration, do they start charging our kids to use those fields? Are those now become revenue producers for the school district? And we're looking for places. So I don't want to burst anyone's bubble, but I mean, this is stretched on months. And the concern for me was we're all going to be sitting here in these meetings, and other than a formal vote, which I can probably put on for the next meeting, but straw polls through the town administrator, the way the board sits now is we will not give up complete control of probably close to 65% of our athletic fields.
Randy, Randy, so do you guys really feel that the schools would do that?
Well, like I said, I don't think Jeff and George.
No, I know the school committee wouldn't do that at this point. I know that. Do you really think down the line they would? I'm just being honest.
Well, let's say in a tough budget year, and all of a sudden we need revenue. Now our fields become revenue producers.
The baseball fields are already getting rented by club baseball teams, so revenue is getting produced by outside.
And who's getting that?
The town does.
The town.
Oh, the towns, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could see your point, because if this were to change, it wouldn't be me, but I mean, if this were to change and and they know the town's getting revenue from club fields, then why wouldn't the school then call those club teams?
So now Whitman Youth Soccer and Whitman Youth Baseball have to charge now. Whitman football pays to use the football field up here.
Right.
Just like everybody else does. It's a district field.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what happens in the gymnasium if town performing arts groups pay to use the Performing Arts Center. You know, right now, Whitman Youth Soccer and Whitman Baseball do not pay anything to use those town fields.
Yeah.
So
And conversely, Whitman Town Soccer and Whitman Town Basketball don't pay for practice inside also, because it's worked out. There's been no issue.
Can't we just have a signed agreement and record that?
They won't let us.
They won't let us. That's
MSBA won't let us?
MSBA
leases.
These are our guidelines. You have to do what we say.
Well, it's not a lease if it's a signed agreement,
It's a
and you can
lease.
record that at the registry of deeds.
The
right?
lease says specific, and
But can
try
we-
to
You can
get
get rid of the
Can we
lease, and that will solve
Yeah, but the
that.
lease says that there are no other considerations, and you have to have their boilerplate.
No, get rid of the lease.
No, you
It's
can't.
the
You have to
MSBA
accept
lease.
their lease, and it has to be for a term
They
of
come up
50
with-
years.
It's their lease. Right.
So you couldn't even do anything to the regional agreement?
Correct.
Does it say in their lease, the MSBA's lease, that the school district has control of the
Yeah.
fields?
Just what he just said,
That's-
complete control of all
So
parcels.
that's why
That's
we
the
went back to divide the parcel that the school sits on, separate that parcel, and we can give that parcel complete control where the school's going to be. But now it comes back to, oh, nope, it's not just the school, it's the
What
road
happens
in.
if you do it a
It's
year after
parking.
the school is built?
Yeah.
Can they come back on the town to try and get money?
You call in the loan?
Does the school district say, no, we have a signed lease and now you're violating it?
Well, you can always add an addendum to.
I mean, it's gone on months, and the town's position
We've
has
gotta
not
go.
changed. And, well, we figured out a way.
Yeah.
But they keep saying, nope, you don't fit our our cookie cutter project diagram. Town of Whitman doesn't fit it.
Yeah, understood.
Can
I'm just-
we somehow lock Jack McCarthy, the town's attorney, a few of us on this committee, and go into a round padded room with a table and chairs in the middle, and just sit there and here it is. Let's hash it out, and we either come out of this room with an agreement or we don't.
But I'm hearing that you've kind of already done that. You've already had
Well,
meetings
we've
like that.
gone back
right?
and forth so many different times, and I mean, I believe you were on the call where you had Jack's underling, you know, well, I'll run it up the flagpole. I don't know about you, but I didn't have the utmost in confidence of the way he was speaking.
Well, I would say in that call, the superintendent, myself, the town, we were on the same page. We have something that works.
And
What they're proposing is not going to work. You're not going to get a project. You're not going to get the use of ownership of the fields. I don't know how much more clear, our position hasn't changed in the last, I don't know, this has gone on 5 months now.
What's that?
We want what we have. So I don't know if we're wasting everyone's time, but I mean, they said we were going to get a direct answer, and what we got was just another MSBA attorney citing the same rule and regulation that they had prior.
So do you think then it would be, just to gain clarity one way or the other maybe, do you think then putting it on the selectmen's agenda for a vote and then giving that to John to give to them might at least either cause that room meeting, or at least we'd have an answer?
I'll give it to the town attorney. I think that hopefully she would have.
But we've done the attorneys. I don't know. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, but we've done that. We've done all of us talking on a Zoom call.
I mean,
should have opened up the meeting with that.
What I don't want that vote, I mean, that vote then becomes binding. It's a no. You know, we vote, we're not going to do that, we come back to you, it's a no. MSBA says it's a no, and it's done. We've tried to work it out, and I don't know any other way than to say, I mean, it's not like we're asking to change something, and I mean, you have two parties saying this works for us. You're going to have a parcel that you have complete control of, that the building sits on. And now the rules change. Oh, now it's not just the spot the school sits on. Now it's the road in, and it's the parking, and it's the field. It's, you know, we think we found a way, and that the goal line gets extended even further. You don't need, it has nothing, you're not even, the MSBA isn't even covering the cost of the tear down, correct? They don't cover any of that, right?
No, but to your point, how can we, what would the next step be in your mind? I mean,
when we left that call that you were on, I thought we were going to get a definitive answer. So I either want MSBA to actually come out and write down to the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, if you don't get complete control, you don't get our money.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they go back with, oh, try to figure it out locally. Well, we have figured it out locally.
Right.
It worked. If figuring it out locally means to come to some agreement, we're there. It's been figured out locally. It works.
Right.
So I guess if we keep going, I guess then does this committee have a task for John in this matter, just so he can have some marching orders?
Well, all I can really do is try to be the conduit to the MSBA as best I can. You know, you want me to facilitate another meeting, I can certainly try to do that, but I don't want to waste your time. Sounds like you've already done it. But
I'd like to look them in the eye, and I'd like to get in a room and say, bring your decision makers. Enough of this, we'll let you know, we'll run it up the flagpole, etc. If we can get decision makers in the room, well, that would be the ultimate goal. Diane Sullivan, I mean, she's come out in the past.
If we're at a point where we're at a stopping point, which it sounds like we are, maybe there's another step. That's all I can take away from this.
I mean, and just to clarify, although we moved to parcel 2, under the full, agreement that no one's playing up here during the construction. It's all shut down. No one's going to be in the way. The town isn't. For a couple of years, we can seek other options.
Right.
So it's not like we're going to try mingling games in during construction. We'll shut it down completely, but you're not going to get ownership of it all.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, they will have, and I'm talking about construction, etc., would have complete and total access during that construction phase. You don't have to worry about where you're putting a tractor or a front-end loader or an excavator. You don't have to worry about where you're piling steel or, goods. They will have unfettered access, and I think that's been conveyed.
Well,
and how is that documented?
In the last email, that's where I was kind of concerned, because that has come up. Well, what about during construction? And we have flat out said the whole parcel, even a little more if the part, is let's get it done, let's get the school taken down,
Right.
let's get a project passed, and everybody goes back to the way things were with the new school.
So hypothetically, if the town signs some type of, it's not an easement, but some right of access for a certain duration, for the construction duration, for parcels X, Y, and Z, whatever they are, you would be willing to do that, obviously.
Yep. Construction, we have
And then like
completely...
upon completion and turnover of whatever the new building, it goes
We
back.
revert back to what we had. Yep. And we were very clear about that. We're not going to try using these fields or, nope.
How about if it's in writing?
Well, I think it wasn't,
Originally was in writing?
through emails, yeah.
No, the attorney drafted.
Yeah.
Nancy drafted it.
Nancy drafted it,
With all
yeah.
that stuff, though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That info?
Yeah.
What about our reps? State run.
Well, I know Ellison Sullivan is more than willing to help us in whatever
We have
endeavor.
3 reps between the two.
Well, no, you have one rep because it's a Whitman project, but Allison is on board to help us as much as possible.
Yeah, I've talked to both of them, and they absolutely will do what they can. And
Let's get somebody to do what they can.
And unfortunately, just until probably, when did that email come out? Last, Wednesday, maybe a week ago. You know, we were still in this holding pattern of the head of MSBA was going to rule. And it doesn't seem like it's actually gone to him that we...
No, I agree with that. It doesn't appear that that's the case.
I mean, I'm more than willing to, with Jeff and George, and you know, sit down and bring the town administrator in and say, look, we have a deal between the parties that, once this is built, have to live together. We have a deal. It works.
Can we invite Jack and Diane Sullivan? I'm serious.
Maybe. There might be precedent for that. Have you seen them come to
our meeting,
SBC in the past?
Well, to meet with the town and an attorney.
Town meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd go.
Take a ride in.
We can get some FaceTime with them. I mean, it can't hurt. At least we've turned over every stone. I mean,
Well, I think if the town, you know, and it's a couple of representatives with you and Jeff, and you folks, if we go in and say, look, this works for us, no party has a problem with how it ends up. I don't know why they're fighting us.
I can't opine on that either. I can only say I'll help facilitate the meeting.
Can you make some calls
If
tomorrow
that's
and
my
see if that can
charge
be
after tonight,
facilitated?
then yeah, I will do that, absolutely.
But it has to be with Diane and Jack. It has to be with decision makers.
Yeah, obviously, or else it's not
Because otherwise, I
worthwhile.
think everyone's just wasting their time because we've done that too many times.
Well, absolutely.
So they're willing to go and meet there.
I mean, Beth, we've been probably 5 or 6 hours, you know, combined meeting, like Zoom meetings and conference calls, just to get this batch of lawyers, oh, that guy left, now we have another lawyer, and he just cites the same passage from their regulations, as if that's you know, this is what we do.
There's gotta be some exceptions, you know, when there's agreement of both parties.
I just can't see how it concerns them what happens after the project is built for control of parking. You know, it just...
Can't opine on that. But like I said, let's try to have that meeting.
Okay. So you will coordinate that and start to facilitate that, get in touch with Randy and Frank and Judge and Jeff?
whatever Jeff says, yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Sure that they'll be amenable.
Okay.
Go from there. All right. So, thank you. Any other questions on the lease itself? Or the lease update? Okay. School building committee form updates. So within your packet, you have what is being sent or has been sent to MSBA. These are items that we've all spoken about and voted. So this is the current roster of this building committee.
We have another meeting at 7. So I don't want to call for anything yet because I don't want to, what I've kind of hesitated on is, that's like...
Right, because it's binding, right?
We
Makes
vote,
sense.
and
Makes sense.
we've drawn a line in the sand.
Yeah, I just wanted to give him some direction so we can keep going. Makes perfect sense.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Has everyone had a chance to review this document? And are there any questions, I guess? I don't know that we need to vote it, but I will gladly entertain a motion if someone would like to make one, and we can vote it into the record as presented.
It shows me as a local building official.
You're part-time still, on call, correct?
I think the thinking was that at this point in time is...
There was somebody that left the committee, and I think that was what was going to happen was I was going to take that position.
Yeah, I have no problem with revising this and having you as a citizen, member at large, and sliding Tim in as a local official responsible for building maintenance, because he is responsible for the maintenance.
Just so you know, I'm a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals now, so I think it's better off that I am not an assistant to the building official.
Okay, but then again, you are sort of a building official.
I am certified as a building commissioner, yes.
Okay.
So that hasn't changed. I just don't have a local appointment in Whitman.
Okay. Let me just think here.
That email's not right either.
No, you've got my email, right?
So,
The email is not right.
Which I wasn't.
right, originally. So let's do it this way.
He could take my place as the town person.
Yeah, so what I would do is I would consider a motion to name Tim, who is down in the bottom, as the Director of Facilities, for the school district. I would say, and gentlemen, I'm going to rely on your expertise, that would qualify as a local official responsible for building maintenance.
The Director of Facilities?
Yeah.
Seem to fit that category.
Okay. To have Tim named as the local official responsible for building maintenance, and have Mr. Curran slide down with
Other.
on the other as a former building inspector in Whitman and a licensed
Construction
construction supervisor, which would give him more than enough background. And the other changes that have been made that were voted, we had named Brandon, and he's on there. We had named Tim, and we had moved Mr. Galvin from anything to do with the Finance Committee to being a member at large.
And my only other question was, what about Frank, the town administrator?
He wants to be on it, doesn't he?
I don't think he particularly wants to be named at this point in time.
So Randy suffices, so you don't need...
Randy
the town- you
suffices,
don't
he's
need
a
the
local
town.
budget official.
I would suggest that once we hire a new town administrator, that new town administrator be considered to fill the previous town administrator's spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So for now, this can go with those changes, this can go with those
Yep.
changes made.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so,
So I would entertain that motion. Someone would like to make it? Moved, any second?
I'll second.
Second? Okay, any further discussion? All in- Nope.
What's going on with Dave?
Mr. Cordero had
I mean, if we're going to clean it up, he's,
I see Dave every morning dropping off his daughter and her friends. You want me to just ask him?
Could you?
yeah.
Could you?
Yeah. 7:48, just around there is when he drops them off.
Okay.
I'll let him know.
You know, just ask
I'll check
him,
it.
give a call, or,
Yeah. Hey, you still on?
if
I got
he's
it.
never able to make it, then,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to do what we have to do.
Okay, I'll check with him.
Take it from there.
Wouldn't Mr. Curran, instead of being an other, be in members of community with construction experience? It just makes sense, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have a preference, Bob?
Members of community with construction.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
And my motion.
Right. All right. So the motion should read, Tim Hawley to Building and Maintenance lead position. Bob Curran to, what's your?
Member of the community with construction.
Architecture, engineering, and/or construction.
Okay.
Right.
You know something? That's why I didn't see it.
Right, and for today, Dave stays.
Dave stays.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah, right, no, we'll check.
we'll act on that accordingly next meeting. So we have an amended motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? And it's unanimous. Okay, so that piece is done.
Oh, the invoices.
Feasibility study account invoice approvals. Within your packets and also with some additions today, there are some invoices. We did the line item transfer already, so that's all set. So we would entertain a motion to accept or to pay the invoices as presented. And has everyone had a chance to see the updates that were placed into the drive today?
Correct, the amount, total amount is $115,350.29. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Correct. Heard of Mr. Stanbrook because he has it right in front of him.
It's in yellow.
All right, so,
It's the ones in yellow.
yeah, I would entertain that motion to approve.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, second. And any further discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, great. Next meeting date is
December 13th.
December 13th.
When is it?
December 13th.
Tuesday, December 13th.
And we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Nobody ever wants to stay all night.
Anything good in the selectmen's meeting tonight?
Hey, George,